Most fantasy writers outline themselves straight into mediocrity. It's not that they're lazy, it's that they're using tools built for the wrong job. For years, I did the same until I finally learned what actually works. Now, after writing fantasy for 25 years, I use 15 scenes. That's it. 15 scenes that give me everything I need to write with momentum, depth, and emotional clarity. So in this video, I'm going to show you what's missing from most outlining systems and why it matters, how to structure your novel without losing your voice, and why this outline works even if you're a pantser who hates planning. To start, let me show you how to anchor your outline in the emotional promise that makes your story worth telling in the first place. Imagine someone building a bridge with no clear idea where it's supposed to go. They pick strong materials, lay down the foundation, even install intricate support beams. But halfway across, they stop. Not because the bridge broke, because they suddenly realize they don't know what it's for, what it connects to, why they are even building it. That's what outlining without a story promise looks like. You've got structure, maybe even a plot, but no emotional destination. And readers can feel that. So here's what I do instead. Think of your story promise as the emotional thread that everything else needs to wrap around. It's not your plot, it's not your magic system, it's the emotional journey, what the story is really about beneath the dragons in danger. This is a story about discovering that true strength comes not from the power we wield, but from the courage to sacrifice what we love most for what we believe in. That's the story promise behind my current work-in-progress novel, The Fugitive Prince, and it shaped every single scene. It told me what to cut, what to lean into, and what kind of ending would feel earned. That's the power of doing this right. But how do you find yours? Well, start by ignoring your plot for a second here. Strip it back and ask yourself, what emotional truth is my protagonist struggling to face? Is it about forgiveness, identity, the price of leadership? Write that answer as a transformation. Not a boy becomes a king, but a boy learns that ruling means protecting even those who betrayed him. Now make it specific, make it cost something. This is a story about learning that true strength comes from vulnerability. It's quite differently than this is a story about defeating the Dark Lord, doesn't it? Here's some common pitfalls I've come across when crafting story promises. First, being too plot focused instead of emotion focused. This is a story about a farm boy becoming a warrior, for example, tells us what happens, but not why we should care. Second, making promises too vague or universal. This is a story about finding yourself, could describe almost any book. Your promise needs to be specific enough to guide your storytelling decisions. And lastly, confusing external goals with emotional journeys. This is a story about saving the kingdom focuses on the external quest rather than internal transformation. Here's a simple exercise to help you refine your story promise. First, write down what happens in your story, the plot. Then ask yourself why this matters to your protagonist emotionally. From here, ask yourself what universal truth this reveals about human nature. And finally, combine these elements into a promise that focuses on emotional transformation. When you lock this in, everything gets easier. Characters start pulling their own weight, conflicts deepen, even your magic system starts to mean something. Now, if you want my personal help applying all this to your story, from defining the promise to building the full outline, I've got something you'll want to hear about at the end of this video. But first, let's lock in the second piece of your outline. Because if the story promise gives you direction, the next part gives you focus. People love asking writers what their story is about. And fantasy writers in particular often hate answering that question despite all the excitement. Because the moment it comes up, we feel this strange pressure to explain everything all at once. The plot, the magic system, the creatures and races we've invented. The more we say, the less people understand, unless they are willing to sit down and listen to an almost endless presentation. The problem here is not the depth of a writer's world, it's a lack of properly anchoring the entire story. That's what a logline is for. Loglines capture the essence of your story without getting lost in details. It's not just a pitch, it's your blueprint, the line that holds your entire structure together. A good logline does one job. It focuses your entire novel into one clean, specific sentence. The format I use looks like this. When an inciting incident happens to protagonist, they must objective or else stakes, but obstacle stands in their way. Let me show that format in action by using The Lord of the Rings as an example. Here's how I'd define its logline. When a humble hobbit inherits an ancient ring of ultimate power, he must journey across the world to destroy it, or watch his peaceful homeland fall to the forces of tyranny, where the ring's corrupting influence threatens to destroy him first. That's not a summary, it's a spine. It gives Frodo a goal, a cost, and something clawing at him the entire time. That one sentence forces every single scene to serve the same pressure. And it works the same way for original stories. Here's the one for my own novel, The Fugitive Prince. When his father is corrupted by dark forces and tries to kill him, an exiled prince must rally unlikely allies and harness ancient magic to save his kingdom and the woman he loves. Notice how all the elements in that logline, the corruption of the king, Storm's exile and need for allies, the mysterious ancient magic, and the dual stakes of kingdom and loved one, create a framework for evaluating story decisions. Each major scene in the novel should either reveal more about his family's betrayal, develop Storm's journey to find and unite allies, hint at his growing connection to ancient magic, or deepen the personal stakes involving his kingdom and the woman he loves. If it doesn't serve at least one of these purposes, it probably doesn't belong in the novel. Because here's the trap so many writers fall into. We invent strong moments that don't belong in the same story. The logline fixes that. It forces clarity before complexity. It stops you from writing filler without realizing it. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't limit your creativity, rather it channels it into the most effective direction. Every scene becomes an opportunity to deepen your core conflict, every character interaction a chance to raise the stakes or challenge your protagonist in meaningful ways. Remember though, while I've shown you the basic formula I use, don't feel constrained by its exact order. Your logline might flow better with the obstacle before the stakes, or the protagonist's description leading the sentence. What matters is that all the core elements are present: the inciting incident, your protagonist, their objective, the stakes, and the obstacle. Think of these components as ingredients rather than a rigid recipe. Arrange them in whatever way tells your story most compellingly. But as it turns out, even the sharpest logline can still fall apart if the tension beneath it doesn't move. Clarity alone won't carry a story. What drives everything forward is pressure. Not one kind of pressure, 3. Most writers think they are stuck because their plot's too thin. But what they are often really missing is tension that pulls in different directions at the same time. Scenes feel flat not because nothing's happening, but because the conflict is one-dimensional. That's where the conflict triangle comes in. Every strong scene and every unforgettable novel sits on 3 legs of pressure. First, we have external conflict, what the world throws at them. Then we have interpersonal conflict, what others reflect back at them. And finally, we have internal conflict, what they can't yet face in themselves. It's not enough to have a problem. You need problems that echo. You pull one corner and the other two tighten. Ignore one side and the story sags. Let me take this triangle and use it on the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Externally, Jack Sparrow is trying to outrun the British Navy and the cursed undead crew that mutinied against him. That's threat. Interpersonally, he's in constant tension with Will, who doesn't trust him but needs him, and Elizabeth, who's caught between loyalty and curiosity. That's friction. And internally, Jack is fighting cowardice disguised as cleverness. He claims he's in it for the ship, but his choices start revealing something messier. Pride, pain, maybe even regret. Now look at any of his scenes. Almost none of them resolve one conflict cleanly. They tangle all 3. And that's what gives even light dialogue its weight. It's not just witty banter, it's layered pressure. This is where your outline either gets teeth or falls apart under a spotlight. So how do you apply all this correctly? Well, when you're shaping your major scenes, use the conflict triangle as a test. Let's say your hero is confronting a traitor mid-battle. The external is obvious, enemy soldiers everywhere. But what makes it sharp is that this traitor was their closest friend, and still insists they betrayed for a noble reason. That's interpersonal heat we've just added. Now give the moment an internal blade on top. Your hero knows they've made morally grey calls too, and maybe their friend isn't entirely wrong. Suddenly there's not just one right move to make here. The key is making sure these ripples feel natural and meaningful. This doesn't mean every scene needs to be equally weighted across all 3. Sometimes one type of conflict will take center stage, but the ripples should always be there, creating depth and complexity in your story. Here's a practical way to apply all this. When planning a scene, start with these 3 simple steps. Identify your scene's primary conflict, external, interpersonal, or internal. Ask how this conflict might affect the other 2 points of your triangle. Then look for natural ways to weave these effects into your scene. For instance, a chase scene might primarily be about external conflict, escape, but you can enrich it with showing how it strains or strengthens relationships, and how your protagonist's internal fears or values affect their decisions during the chase. The beauty of this approach is that it helps you avoid those dreaded filler scenes that don't move your story forward. Every scene becomes an opportunity to develop multiple layers of conflict, keeping your readers engaged and your story moving at a compelling pace. But of course, knowing where the tension comes from isn't enough. You still need to know when it peaks and how to mark a moment as a real turning point. And for that, we need to stop thinking in plot beats and start thinking in irreversible choices. Picture this: a young warrior has trained her whole life to kill the monster that destroyed her village. She finally finds it, wounded, cornered, and helpless. And in that moment, she realizes something that no training prepared her for. It's protecting a child. It was never attacking, it was defending. That's the moment everything changes, because she does something she can't take back. She hesitates, then she allows the creature to survive and flee. That hesitation, that decision of mercy, cracks her belief in vengeance. It shatters her certainty. From here on, every decision she makes is colored by this split in her identity: hunter or human being. She can't go back, and whether she follows that hesitation or fights it, she's now a different person than the one who walked into that clearing. That's what emotional waypoints are. Not just plot beats, not checkpoints on a hero's journey template. They are scenes in your outline where your protagonist makes lasting decisions, where what they do changes who they are. These moments are the bones of your character arc. They're what take your hero from surviving the plot to being reshaped by it. Think about some of the most memorable moments in your favorite fantasy novels or movies. Chances are they are emotional waypoints where characters made choices that had irreversible consequences. The key to crafting these powerful moments lies in understanding three fundamental elements. First, the stakes must feel real and personal. This doesn't always mean life or death. Sometimes emotional or moral stakes can cut even deeper. What matters is that your character has something genuine to lose or gain through their choice. Second, the choice should force your character to prioritize competing values or beliefs. The most powerful decisions often come when characters must choose between two things they deeply care about. And third, each choice must have lasting consequences that affect future decisions. This creates what I call choice resonance, where each decision gains emotional power from those that came before it. After years of refining this system, I found that 5 emotional waypoints are all you need to chart a powerful character arc. With these 5 emotional scenes in place, your outline has gravity. The rest of the story gains purpose because your character isn't just reacting, they are evolving. And the best part of this approach is how clean it makes your outline. Once you've locked in your 5 emotional waypoints, your entire arc becomes easier to build. These aren't floating epiphanies, they are moments of visible action, deeply tied to both your story promise and your logline. Now, if you want to go deeper and actually apply all of this to your own fantasy novel, step by step, scene by scene, I'll walk you through the full process inside my self-paced writing course. I'll share more about it at the end of the video, because locking in these 5 scenes is only half the story. Next, I'll show you how to map them into something powerful, a flexible structure that gives your outline direction without locking you into something that kills your creativity. Think of a novel like a suspension bridge. The 5 emotional waypoints are your anchor towers, those towering supports that hold the whole thing up. But without the cables connecting them, the bridge doesn't carry anything. It collapses on its own weight. That's where your scene map comes in. These are the cables. They connect each emotional waypoint with just enough tension to hold your story aloft from start to finish. And because they're built on emotion, not filler, they actually carry the load. Here's how it works. Each of your 5 waypoints gets 3 scenes. A setup that builds pressure around a difficult decision, a choice where your protagonist acts in a way that changes everything, and an aftermath where we see the personal and narrative cost of that decision. That gives you 15 scenes, and those 15 scenes are enough to outline your entire novel. Let me tell you more about those 3 scenes. Setup scenes build tension gradually but purposefully, establish clear stakes that matter to your characters, plant seeds of the coming conflict across all points of your conflict triangle, and make the approaching choice feel both inevitable and dreaded. Choice scenes then force your character to act, not just react, present genuinely difficult options with no clear right answer, show the weight of the decision through your character's emotional struggle, and make the choice arise naturally from previous developments. And then finally, the aftermath scenes show immediate emotional and practical fallout, create ripples that affect future choices, deepen character relationships and internal conflicts, and set up new tensions that pull the story forward. This 3-scene structure creates what I call emotional resonance. Each scene amplifies the impact of the others. The setup makes the choice matter, the choices make the consequences in the aftermath meaningful, and the aftermath itself creates new tensions that drive the story forward. And what makes this model powerful is that it's modular. You can zoom in on any of these 5 scene clusters and add connective tissue, subplots, reversals, quiet moments, but you don't need them. These 15 scenes alone give you a complete emotional arc that holds together under pressure. This is also what stops you from padding your story with scenes that seem cool but don't do anything. Every scene in the map answers to something. It either has to build, break, or transform the character's emotional journey. I've seen writers spend months planning sprawling plots and still feel lost, but when we reduce it to these 15 key scenes and track how each one moves the character emotionally, they finally get traction. It stops being about what happens and it becomes about what matters. So once your emotional waypoints are clear, build each one out with these 3 scenes. No sprawling spreadsheets, no huge templates, just tension, action, and consequence, over and over again. But while this gives you a full structure, you might ask yourself what comes next. Some writers need a detailed map, others just need a direction and a good pair of boots. And this framework here, it gives you both. Those 15 scenes you just built based on 5 emotional waypoints, each with a setup, choice, and aftermath, they aren't just a scaffold, they are the novel. If you would never add another scene, you still have a story with tension, arc, emotional progression, and a protagonist who actually changes. That's rare, and it's more than enough. But if you do want more, that's where connecting scenes come in. If you're the kind of writer who loves layering in quiet reversals, thematic subplots, or parallel arcs, you can build off this spine in any direction. That same framework here, it still holds. It doesn't collapse when the word count grows. It adapts, because each cluster already handles the emotional lift. The rest is about adding depth, not just more pages. Say you're leading into your second waypoint, so before the setup of this cluster. You might add a processing scene where your character reflects on the cost of their last choice or fails to. Or a development scene where a relationship strains, shifts, or solidifies before the next decision hits. The difference here is intent. You're not adding scenes to fill space, you're creating a deeper echo chamber for the emotional journey you've already mapped. Every added beat has a job to do here. And if you're a discovery writer, you don't need to map these extras at all. That's the point. These 15 scenes give you the compass already. So long as each one lands, you're free to discover the path between them in whatever way feels true to your voice. You never lose control of the structure. You never lose sight of the character arc. This flexibility is exactly what makes the framework powerful. It's not a template per se, it's a foundation. And once you know how to build from it, you can bend genre, structure, pacing, anything without ever breaking the story. So if this clicked for you and you want to actually apply it to your own fantasy novel, I built a complete writing course to help. It's self-paced and you get direct feedback from me personally as I answer all questions in every lesson myself. Writers who've taken it so far have loved it, with all reviews up to this point earning 5 stars. But more importantly than that, those writers finally got moving. If your story is still stuck in your head, this is your chance to change that. Don't wait another month just to feel the same frustration. Let's get your story moving too. You'll find the link in the description below.